A text says, "You're on my mind." A bouquet from 1-800-Flowers says, "You're my everything." Heartfelt moments belong in the real world, not just your phone. For 50 years, 1-800-Flowers has helped millions of people make memories that'll last a lifetime with gifts they'll cherish forever. Their expertly curated arrangements and gift baskets ship nationwide with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't wait for the next big moment. Make it when you visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
The following is a delayed podcast studio production. All right, welcome back to a podcast that I have not done in quite some time. My name is Aaron. This is a delayed teacher podcast. Yes, I know a delayed podcast studios was just announced at the start of this, but this is my longest running podcast show. And we haven't had an episode of this since July 26th of 2023. That's 6 years ago, just a few days over. So exactly 6 years ago, give or take a couple days, was the last time I sat down with this microphone and hosted myself and the conversation underneath the title of a Delayed Teacher podcast. Now, you'll may be wondering, what has brought you back to the microphone, Aaron? The podcast that you have underneath this new A Delayed podcast studio umbrella, there's a lot of them, it seems. There is County Gamers now. There is the Gilmore Geeks. There's a bunch of them. And while those will continue, those are collaborative efforts, and there are plenty more collaborative efforts to come. But I have wanted to return to this for quite some time. Now, yes, it's A Delayed Teacher. You'll also know, if you've ever listened to this podcast umbrella that this sits under, that I had a 3-episode series called the A Delayed Writer. And that was a short stint. I didn't get back to it after December of 2024, I think, or 2023. That was where I was doing my writing, my actual novel writing, which I published in January 2024. And now we're in 2026. It's 2 years later, and you're going to ask a lot of questions, which I will answer in this podcast there. So this podcast, yes, I am a teacher. I may talk about teaching off and on, maybe. But the primary focus of this podcast is me as a writer, but also me as a reader, because my reading habits have faded, and they are not as strong as they used to be. And I need to correct that, and I need to be accountable to that. And what better way to be accountable to that than to put myself on the internet and send it out into the ether and see if anybody's listening and if anybody wants to hear me talk about books I'm reading. Past, present, and present novels, old school and new school and whatever else in between. My goal is to hold myself accountable to actually have something to review every time I sit down to record this, which right now I'm thinking once a week. But I'm also going to talk about my writing and the novel that I wrote. If you're interested, adelayedteacher.com. There is a link to my projects. You can find the link to the book. It's called 7 Days, A Seventh Fall Story. The sequel is currently being written, and I'll talk about that. But I wanted to come back to this podcast because this is what I love to do. The first episode ever of A Delayed Teacher, which is the first episode I ever produced underneath this umbrella that started out being A Delayed Podcast, then became Create at Morgan, and is now back to A Delayed Podcast. That's a little bit inside baseball if you're curious. That's how it went out. The first episode ever was at A Delayed Teacher, and it was from January 9th, 2018. It is still available. It is still online. It is still there. It is the conversation of our teacher cohort as we were finishing up and heading into student teaching. It's an interesting conversation because all of those people, some of them are still in education, some of them are not. They're all friends. I still consider them incredible people that have shaped me as a teacher through our college experiences and our post-college experiences. But it's been 8 years, and it will be 9 years in January of 2027 that I have been producing podcast content from then to now. It's been an exciting ride, and I would like to continue that journey. Hopefully you'll continue to join me on that. The future of this podcast may turn into a video podcast. Right now, all you hear is my voice, and you're just seeing an image on the screen if you're watching it on YouTube or wherever. But my goal is to move into the world of video podcasting because I think that will be a fun way to show you the writing process and also just talk to you in a more friendly, face-to-face way. So we'll see how this podcast works out. I'm looking to do it once a week, to sit down, review a book I'm reading or that I've read. Today, I will be talking to you about my novel, but I'll also be talking about a book that I just finished, Klara and the Sun. Kazuo Ishiguro is the writer of that book. It's actually being turned into a movie, and it's an interesting book. I have a lot of things to think about and things to talk to you about. So all that is more to come here on this podcast. And right now, it's just me and my voice. I have plenty of other podcasts that are collaborative, and more of those collaborations are to come. So if you're looking forward to hearing me talk with others and work with others through this audio medium, congratulations, there's more to come. We've been sitting down with some folks, some friends that I work with, and there's more to come there. But for this episode and for most of this, it'll be me. I may bring on other writers if they're willing to come on my little podcast and have a conversation. If there's teachers out there or if there's readers out there and they want to get on here and talk, I'm open to that. A delayedteacher@gmail.com is the email address. The website, if you want to go and look at our various links to various places where this podcast is sent out and put, the website is adelayedteacher.com. Having said all of that, that's your 5-minute briefing. Prepare yourself, lock and load, whatever it takes. Get a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee, decaf if you're in the evening, and sit back and get ready, because here comes a Delayed Teacher episode 25. Or is it 24? I'm a professional. Believe me, I know what I'm doing sometimes. Let me go back to, I got to go look. This is really professional. If you're listening and you're going, well, that was a great segue. You're incredible. Well, I never said I was, whatever. A Delayed Teacher Company, episode 22. Shoot. It's episode 23. Here we come. Stick with us. We'll be right back. I'll be right back.
An empty page, a story to write. We're going away. Get your bag, check the tag. Decision is made. Lock your door, need no more. It's already paid. Cancel your mail for a while. It's a journey for life, and I'm your ride. Hang on. God, I'm praying I'm not alone. A journey for life, and I'm your ride. Oh, hey.
All right, welcome back to A Delayed Teacher podcast, episode, just literally said it out loud, episode 20, oh no, this is wrong. Oh my gosh, it's episode 24. I'm not going back and editing that. I'll just this is the warts and all. This is the show. The episode 23 was back in July 26, 2023. So we're now on episode 24. So we don't get to talk about 25 episodes. We will next time. My name's Aaron. This is my podcast. I'm a teacher in rural Colorado. I teach English. I currently teach in an alternative education high school. I did 2 years in the middle school here locally, teaching 6th grade literacy. And now I teach high school language arts, anywhere from freshmen to seniors. And I also teach creative writing. We are working on some Shakespeare stuff. We've got podcasts. We've got creative writing. We got all kinds of stuff that we do. I love to write. And so that leads us into our first kind of conversation. I'm a writer, and I've been a writer for the longest time that I can remember. Middle school is when I started writing, and we won't look at, I don't even know where half of my middle school writing went, obviously, because that is pre-digital age. It was in the 90s, the late 90s. That was not a time for Google Drive or any of the other things. We had Microsoft Word on our computers, and we had to save on floppies. So if you're like, what is a floppy? Google it. I'm not going to spend the time trying to explain to you. I'm a little older than most people probably listening to this podcast. But it was a different time when it came to technology. But I still wanted to write. My high school years were filled with a lot more writing as technology caught up. We had computer labs. We had computers at home. And I began to really find the joy in the creative process of writing. Now, I have some of my high school writing that I did. It's piled somewhere in a closet because I haven't dug it out lately. I look back on it and I can see that it was clearly, I was a young writer. So I did a lot of writing in high school, and then I graduated high school. I went to college for a year, and I decided to take an off year. Well, that off year turned into basically 14 years, and I never went back to get my bachelor's. That was a mistake, and I don't want to say that I regret it, because regret suggests that I can go back and change it. I don't think I would be a very different person if I had done if I had gone back to school earlier. I would not have learned the things I've learned. I've not experienced the life I've experienced, and I would not be the teacher I am today here in rural Colorado, or the writer I am today, or the reader I am today. And so everything in life, I would argue, and others would, that happens for a reason. And that was the seasons of my life that have happened since 2014 have definitely put me on a path of positive forward momentum into a career that I do enjoy and love and absolutely want to keep doing. So I went back in 2014 to get my degree. 4 years later, 2018, I graduated, got a job out here, and here I am. But I had started writing back, so I'd abandoned writing. I hadn't really done any writing when I was working full-time after I left college for a bit. And when I got back into college, there were some creative writing classes, there was a drama class, there were things that I was able to shake loose, the creative dust, or the creative rust, if you will, that had settled in my brain and on my fingers and on my keyboards. And in that moment, it was an introduction to theater class. And this is where it all began. If you want to, if you want to pull out the movie narrator voice in the summer, in August of 2014. Actually, it was January, wasn't it? Yeah, January 2014. And it was like probably actually more like January, probably August when I went to full-time classes. In August of 2014, Aaron discovered he was a writer once more. You can get the Hollywood narrator voice, the trailer voice. But it was in an introduction to theater class. And for that class, at the end of the class, we had to create a one act that we wrote. And it was a zany one act. It was a coffee shop. It was the idea that people were in this coffee shop and they were in the place before they were sent to either heaven or hell. It was very interesting, and there was a cast of characters, and it was zany and wild and wacky, and I don't even remember half of it. I don't even know if I could find it. But what came out of that was my sitting back after that and sitting down and going, well, I've got a story that I want to tell. This is kind of a cool thing. So I took that story that play that I had written in the zany characters, and I trimmed them and I cleaned them up. And I wrote a one scene start to a short story. It involved a guy in a coffee shop, a girl coming in, and she had tried to jump off a bridge because all was lost and her boyfriend had told her she was living the wrong life. There's a lot of layers, to be clear. And so suddenly I had a story and I had characters. Now, as a writer, I've discovered the danger of giving your characters agency, because once you breathe life and breathe life, there we go, into your characters, when they become less, they lose their flat status and they become dynamic. When there's depth, when there's a brain inside that character now that you have to grapple with, how is that brain going to think when I put this character into a situation? And you now have to reflect on as the kids would say, the lore of that character and the experiences that you've created from that character's history. You now have to decide what that character does. And as a writer, and any writer of any period of time who has created a dynamic character or dynamic characters and has to then write a scene with them, understands what happens, because you no longer have control within yourself. You are now subjective to the whims of that character, given whatever plot devices you have thrown in front of them. And so these characters suddenly were asking for another scene. And I kind of said, okay, I haven't written anything significant, like novel length, ever. I've always done short stories that never really got anywhere. And so I said, okay, we're going to do this. So I began the process. And it took upwards of 7 years to get it done, finished, sent to an editor, sent back, revised, sent back to the editor. It was a whole process. But the story that I published was so much better than what I had put to paper originally, that while now knowing what I know and what I've learned through the process, through other like writing experiences and writing classes and writing learnings, books and things that I've read, I probably would have written a better story. I would have probably written a far more superior version of the story that's now published in the world. So now I have to write a sequel. Once that, because there was more to be told. And this, sometimes like novel writers will just write one story and that's it and they're done. Klara and the Sun is a one and done. And there's no room for a sequel that would really be of any course. Hollywood really doesn't do this well because they see the money signs and they keep putting out Toy Story movies or other rebooted or reimagined whatever sequels within universes of movies. As a writer, you have to decide, okay, is there more to come? Is there more in this story that needs to be told? And for the Seven Falls story, there is. And the sequel is currently underway, and that is now harder because I have an entire book worth of mythology and history and characterization that I have to square and make sure that I am actually working with and within the characters in this sequel, that the sequel characters and their actions and their words and their dialogue and their inner thoughts don't betray and don't retcon the original plot and story that were written back in 2024 or were finished in 2024. And so it's harder to write a sequel sometimes because you have to really go back. And I have copies of that book here on my shelf behind me where I have to go back and go, okay, got to remind myself, how did this character act? How did they, what's their evolution? But there's also a benefit in that sequel is that characters can grow. And when I was talking about flat versus dynamic characters, your flat character just exists. Sometimes they can be Mary Sue's, but they're not engaging. They're just there, they exist, they serve a purpose and they move on. Dynamic characters are richer, they are deeper, they are incredibly diverse within how they act and how they work and who they are. And as a reader, you want to encounter diverse characters in your fiction that you're reading. And as a writer, you want to make sure your characters are dynamic. Because a dynamic character makes you feel things. A dynamic character makes you wonder, makes you worry for them, makes you predict, makes you think you know them, and then suddenly you don't know them because they're doing something that you didn't expect. And you're like, you've betrayed me as a reader, but the reality of it is that character is acting on their instincts that have been built within them. It's wild to be a reader and a writer at the same time, but as a writer, to learn this over time, the writer that I was in 2024 is definitely not the writer that I am in 2026 now. And that will be the case. The writer I am in 2026 now will not be the writer I am in 2027 because I'll have learned more. I'll have sent another thing to an editor. I'll have dug into these additional novels that I'm writing. The power of characters and the power of a well-written story is they make you feel, and they can make you angry. They can make you sad. They can make you happy. They can make you angry. They can push you to a point where you're like, I hate this character. That's powerful literature. Anything that makes you feel. Now, there's a difference. If you're reading it and you're going, this is terribly written, it's making me angry, it's an entirely different emotional reaction. And I'm not really going to get into that at the moment. You can search YouTube for plenty of videos about the current situation around writing and novels and book talk and how there's a lot going on out there. Not even going to engage with that ball of twine. Not today. But my point is that a novel with dynamic characters and a dynamic story, it'll make you feel across the range of emotions. And the different characters will give you different feelings and give you different reactions and interactions. That's the power of dynamic characters. Now, as a writer, it is really, really challenging to make sure that I hold to that dynamic character piece. And so that's when I have to sit back, write a scene, and then step back and go, okay, does this scene actually work? It's been hard. I worked on my sequel a little bit this summer, and then I've actually gone into, I have a steampunk kind of Wild West story that I found more interest in writing that at the moment. It's up to 30,000 words now. It started out at about 20,000 at the beginning of the summer. And that's a small miracle to get to that point. And it's got a lot of thematic work. And what I've discovered as a writer is writing themes and writing in connecting arcs where there's a payoff. Something I learned from my first editor was that, and if you're listening to this and you're like, well, yeah, duh. I learned, okay? We as writers, we're always learning. We're always figuring out what the next thing is. that we have to work at and get better at and sharpen our craft. But the thing I took a lot of things away from this editor. She was amazing. Kendall, shout out to you. Is characters have to earn their moments. If a character gets this righteous indignation, this righteous fury moment where they stand up and they make a statement, think about the president's speech in Independence Day. That scene is earned because of everything that happens to show you the absolute desolation and destruction that has been visited upon not just the United States, but the world. And all of that desolation, all of that destruction, all of that groundwork, that foundational build allows that moment where the president ends that this will be our Independence Day. You feel something. That movie is 20 plus years old, and it's still, I still get goosebumps when I think about that scene among many other scenes of that movie. Don't get me started on the sequel. It doesn't exist to me. But Independence Day is a movie that earns its moments. It earns the punch to the alien from Will Smith. Welcome to Earth. Like, it earns it because you understand the characters, because the movie's done the work. And it's done in a way that's showing you and not telling you. And so you're right along with every single one of these characters as the moments happen and as these payoffs happen. And so by the time we get to the end of the movie, we're celebrating with everybody else that the aliens have been defeated and the world is saved, and it is Independence Day. That's the power of a well-written, well-thought-out, well-done story with dynamic characters that you care about, that are going to make you angry, that are going to make you upset, that are going to make you cheer and boo and all these things. That is the power of a well-written story, movie, whatever you want to call it. Well-written content, I guess we could say. Video games are included in that. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying to make sure that my novel stories that I'm writing contain dynamic characters and earn their moments, earn what they're doing, and there's a payoff. That I'm not just throwing things against the wall to see what sticks. I'm taking the various sprockets, or the gears, if you will, in the clock of my book, to borrow the mechanical kind of thing, and making sure that each piece that I'm putting in there as I'm building this grandfather clock of a novel, that it's not going to come to a screeching halt and go, Brr! That it's actually going to work and have a payoff, and people are going to want to read this thing and read it again. So that's where I'm at. I can talk you through my novel project briefly as I sit here, because you probably are wondering, okay, well, what are these stories? Again, they're at delayedteacher.com is where you can find it. I will run you through my novels. So I use dabblewriter.com for my writing. So the first book is 7 Days Book 1. It's 7 Falls Book 1. The sequel, I'm calling it Fall, or The Fall Book 2, 7 Falls Book 2. There's also a book that I'm writing called The Broken. And it's going to be a series in the Empire of the Stars series. There is also the Gears of Honor series, which is the steampunk Wild West book as well. The Broken, which is the high fantasy, it was sent out to an editor with like 49,000 words. It came back and she's like, "You could write 100,000 words. There's so much potential here. That's the best news you could have gotten." And I was like, "It's great." And now I got to write 50,000 more words. That one has sat off to the side. Gears of Honor has had the most attention, but I do desperately want to finish my sequel to the 7 Falls Book 1. If you're interested in picking it up, you can find it on Amazon. The links are on there. I don't get any profit off of it. I've priced them as low as I can. Amazon gets all the profit from it, so I don't see any money because they take the money for the printing. It was easier that way so that people could actually access it without having to worry about paying $15 for a paperback or whatever. It's some have called it more of a novella length, and my goal with my sequel is to make it quite longer, more deep and more in depth, and so that will be a little bit of a longer book. So those are my books. You can find them at delayedteacher.com. They're under projects. It's one of my joys is being able to know that I have at least one book published out in the world, and I've got at least 1, 2, 3 more to go that I want to get done and get out there. It's been an experience, and I'll talk more about it as I get into actually getting back into those books. I'll spotlight specifically and go from there. So there you go. That's my writing kind of conversation. Hopefully that was enjoyable. Hopefully you got some ideas. Hopefully you got some, you're checking out my book and you're going to maybe pick it up and read it and then give me some feedback. Again, adelayedteacher@gmail.com is my email if you want to contact me. What I want to do next is I want to move into the book review. So Klara and the Sun is the novel, and it's the movie that it's going to be coming out on. I should have researched this before I actually sat down. Movie, I think it might be. Let me take a look here. Hold on a second. So Klara and the Sun is an actual, it's a movie. So Klara and the Sun is Jenna Ortega, who plays Klara. She is a robot, an AI robot, and Amy Adams plays the mother of the daughter who is in the movie as well. So it looks like an all-star cast. Natasha Lyonne is in the movie. Simon Baker. It's a good cast. Obviously, Jenna Ortega is in everything, so of course she's starring in this one. Which again, it's a great movie. It's a great book. The movie looks interesting. I'm curious to see how that works. Takia Waititi is directing it and also producing it. Taika is a mixed bag currently right now with a lot of stuff, so we'll see how that goes. I'm curious. I'll definitely check it out when it gets out, and I'll give you a review. But Klara and the Sun, spoiler alert. There's going to be so many spoilers here. I'm not even going to lie to you. There's going to be so much spoilers. It's an interesting book, and there's a point in the book where things start to take a turn, and up until the point when we meet the father of Josie, who is the daughter, who her and her mom bought Klara as a robot to help her in her life. There's a moment where things start to get uneven. And I visibly kind of flinched when it started to get uneven. And as a writer myself, I can't criticize a writer for their work. They put it together, they wrote it. Clearly, he's the professional guy. He's the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature. For me to even consider criticizing Kazuo Ishiguro is beyond the pale. There's no way. So I was on board with the book until we get to a place where we find out a bit of Dad's story. We're not given everything, which is what I appreciate about this book. We're shown and we're sort of told, but we're left to kind of connect the dots on our own. I appreciate that. I don't want to be spoon-fed content. I don't want to be spoon-fed plot. I don't want to be spoon-fed characters. I want to feel like the author trusts my intelligence to read and make my own interpretations and make my own conclusions and to do all the things. There's a point in the novel where the mom of the neighbor, who is Rick's the neighbor to Josie, and they live very close to each other out in the country. And we get some idea of why and what's going on there. There's levels. It's a whole thing. It's very complex. And I love that it's complex, but it's so hard to be able to tell you that in the next 15 minutes. There's a moment that comes where Rick's mom basically accuses her dad, Josie's dad, and there's a very specific word used. So again, no judgment, just it given where we are in 2026, it was the word that they use to call Josie's dad, who is their mom, Chrissy, the mom, is divorced from Josie's dad. They use the word fascist, and it accelerates pretty quickly to identify what's going on and where Dad lives. He lives in a commune, and there's very tribalistic kind of segments within this commune or within this compound, within this location they live. And the moment that it begins to kind of unravel, and perhaps this was the intent, but it took me out of my reading experience. And that may have been the author's intent. Again, I have done no research into the author because I just went in blind. But it shook me, and it impacted how I read the rest of it. And it impacted my ability to continue to want to read about these characters, because I felt, and again, personal perspective, no judgment, we listen and we don't judge, to borrow that phrase, it felt, the way that it was phrased and the way that the dialogue was structured felt like a change had come over the characters that was unusual and not what I felt like those characters had portrayed from the start of the novel to where we ended up probably 3/4 of the way through. And so as a writer, I was like, oh boy, what is this like? Because our unreliable our narrator is Klara. She is the android AI thing, and there's different models. You read the book. You have to make your own judgment. You can get it on Amazon, wherever. But we see the world through Klara's eyes. And that's all we have. We only have her to trust what we see. And so while she is trustworthy when it comes to dialogue, you have to now question, similar to The Great Gatsby, an unreliable narrator can definitely have an impact. So it's a moment where it took me out of the novel, and it was hard for me to get back into it. I fought back. I didn't give up. I said, you know what? I'm going to finish this. This is a good book. I don't know if I would call it great. And again, I know winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature is the writer. So it feels kind of weird saying, like, I don't know. Up until that 3/4 of the way through the book, things were good. I checked out. I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then we hit a wall. And I don't know if it was the fascist word that was repeated in accusations to Josie's father by Rick's mom, or why that just kind of spun me around a little bit, but it did. Again, spoilers. It's a reality of books, is that you don't always like every part of the book. I just got done saying a book that makes you feel, characters that make you feel, that's important. This felt, because in using editors and stuff, it felt like an author insertion, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. And so I still don't know what to make of it. I'm going to probably go back and read through some of the passages, some of the parts of the book that I kind of was like, Up until that point, I was sold. And then I hit that stumbling block. It ends well. There's concern that a character might hurt themselves or die. Thankfully, through some kind of machinations, it doesn't. But the journey there can be convoluted, but we are relying on Klara as our narrator, and she is very unreliable, I feel like, after finishing the book. It also felt like there could have been more. And how many pages is this thing? This is, I think it's like just 300 pages, 303 pages, paperback. It felt like there could have been more. And it felt like there was a rush to the end. And I don't know if that was intentional. Again, who am I to criticize the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature? I've said it like 4 times, but I don't know. But it felt, the ending was good, but it wasn't like, oh man, yeah, it earned that. So I got to be honest, it's a personal perspective. There are probably people out there who loved Klara and the Sun and would praise the author all the way around. So there you go. That's my perspective on Klara and the Sun. It's a national bestseller. Obviously, it's going to be made into a movie. They don't, it is what it is. So there you go. There's that perspective. There's that piece of the puzzle. Hopefully that was, if you're curious, you should definitely check it out yourself and read Klara and the Sun. And that's all I have for today for this podcast. This has been a deLayed Teacher podcast. I'm a writer, and I'm a reader, and I'm an educator. And if you have questions, if you have complaints, if you want to debate me on the topics of Klara and the Sun, feel free. adelayedteacher@gmail.com. We will see you on the next episode of The Delayed Teacher next week.
I'm gonna hit the beach in the sunshine. Cheap sunglasses looking so right. Hitting the streets in my old man Chevrolet. Looking for a good time and then some. Kick it with my friends in the hot sand. I got a song blasting by the Zac Brown band, yeah. Kicking it high, kicking it low. Making noise like a big truck show. Raising hell is the way to go.
The raspberry flapovers will be out in a moment. The kitchen is closed.